All right, Chris, I got to hit you with this one as well. So I'm not talking about this happening next year or anytime soon, but I'm talking more from a conceptual standpoint, looking at resources, facilities, fan base, everything that you want to consider. Can South Carolina become a SEC power? I was going to say national power, but if you're an SEC power, you're a national power.
Right.
Is it possible?
I think it's possible, but the way I look at it, Mark, is I think you have to walk before you can run. And so I've talked about what are realistic expectations for South Carolina football. I've talked about that before many times. I think the goal right now, obviously, again, the ultimate goal, right? We all want to win every single game every year. We want to win the SEC title every single year. But when you're setting realistic, healthy expectations, I think a realistic goal for South Carolina football is winning 8 to 9 games per year, averaging, let's say, 8 wins over the course of a decade, averaging 8. And every 2 to 3, maybe 4 years, you've got the right quarterback, you've got a veteran team, the schedule breaks in your favor, whatever it is, right? And every 3 to 4 years, you're realistically making a push for Atlanta. Maybe you're reaching double digits, whatever, you're challenging the Georgias, the Tennessees, whoever else is up there at the time. You're realistically making that push, because if you get to Atlanta, obviously you're going to have an opportunity to win the whole thing. So I think that those are realistic expectations. I really do. And if Shane Beamer does that over the course of a decade, guess what, Mark? He's the greatest coach in school history. So for some people, those expectations even sound unrealistic. But can South Carolina be a power? Yes. And I think you have to believe that, right? Like, that's what keeps people showing up. We want to believe. And I think it's unfair, though. I think it's unfair to say South Carolina can't, because look up the road at what your rival has done. Granted, it's in a different conference. I could argue it's much easier to build a program and sustain success the way Clemson has, because they are in the ACC, and you can kick and scream and bitch and moan till you're blue in the face. I apologize for my language, but you can say whatever you want. It is easier to build a program and sustain success in that conference. However, I think it can be done. Like I said, I want to see South Carolina walk before they run, though, because it's like the chicken or the egg conversation. No pun intended, by the way, but it's the chicken or the egg. What do you have to do first? Do we need to become more successful and win more games because it all comes down to recruiting. I mean, your question, can South Carolina become a power? The question is, can they get the best talent every year? Can South Carolina go from, recruiting 20th to 25th to, top 10? What's it going to take? So my question, I think the chicken or the egg conversation, no pun intended, is, does South Carolina need to win more to attract more elite talent, or do they have to get more elite talent first to win more games? And I think it's a combination of both, obviously, right? I think winning the Duke's Mayo Bowl, I think that, I think a lot of that helped tremendously in bringing guys like Spencer Rattler and Stogner and all these other transfers in, right? I think also understanding that right now we're not recruiting at that level. We're not recruiting at a top 5, top 10 level. You got to be card counters at the blackjack table, I think, like I told you last time. And you've got to be able, I had an assistant coach tell me from last year's staff at South Carolina. He's not there anymore. But he told me, he said, Chris, you know what separates a great recruiter from an average recruiter? It's not if you can land a top 100 player. I mean, those guys are kind of no-brainers, right? Those 5 stars, for the most part, It's, can a recruiter tell the difference between the 250th best player in the country and the 600th best player in the country, and which guy's going to pan out? Because they're both 3 stars. Like, in the ratings, there's no difference. But can you go out and pick those guys? And again, that's what South Carolina did so well under Steve Spurrier. They hit on guys like DJ Swearinger, Melvin Ingram, the Pharaoh Coopers of the world. Connor Shaw was a 2-star. Dylan Thompson was a 2-star. They were able to hit on these guys, right? And so until you're bringing in classes like A&M, Georgia, even Clemson, you got to be able to sprinkle in a few 5 stars, but hit on those guys that I mentioned that maybe are flying under the radar for whatever reason. They're fitting your system, your scheme, your program, and you're getting the most out of them. So again, long story short, to answer your question, yes, I think South Carolina can get there. It's going to take time, and they've got to give Beamer time. They've got to be patient with him. Give him an opportunity to win some games, stack classes. It all comes down to recruiting. He knows. He was there when South Carolina went to the SEC championship. They didn't go to the SEC championship just because they had good players. I mean, you look at a replay of the Bama game from 10 or look at any games from 11, 12, 13, and you look at the names on defense. We're talking about NFL, Pro Bowler, and it takes players. It's all about Jimmys and Joes, man. I mean, players lose games, coaches win them. So I think South kind of can get there. I think it's about taking baby steps, but you got to go get those players because, again, it's the players that are on the field and it's the players that win the games. But I think the resources, Mark, the support, I think it's all there to have big success in Columbia. I sort of look at this program as a sleeping giant. I really do. And I think, and we all believe, fingers crossed, Shane Beamer is going to be that guy to take this program where it's never been before.
But you also mentioned patience with him because there's got to be a pretty good portion of the fan base, and you talk to them all the time, that are thinking, oh, we were 2-8. 7-6 bowl win. We're just off and running. This is not that it's easy, but there's not going to be any bumps in the road. We're just going to keep boom, boom. We'll go to 9-3, then we'll keep going. And it's not necessarily going to be that easy. So there might have to be some, there's sometimes 2 steps up and then you take a step back and to progress.
Yeah. I had somebody tell me one time, Mark, that SEC football fans and bad doctors, they both have one thing in common. They have no patience. So, and that's a terrible dad joke for you that I give you permission to take and use on your show. But no, I mean, it's for sure. I understand these coaches are paid a lot. And again, we don't have patience, but it's year 2, man. I mean, when Beamer was hired, I just looked at it as, okay, this is a minimum 5-year thing. Like, you gotta, the reason, again, you look at Carolina, 10, 11, 12, 13, it's not just about getting a couple good players. It's like, the depth, if that's what it comes down to, that competitive depth. I mean, Carolina was 2-3 deep. You look at the line of scrimmage, they could throw that second team D line out there and not miss a beat. I've had Brad Lawing on my show who coached D line for us. He told me, he said, Chris, I was 9-10 deep. 9-10 players. I felt good about rotating in. That's what it comes down to. It's about that competitive depth, not falling off when you put your 2s in. That's what makes Bama, Bama. That's what makes Georgia, Georgia. That's what makes the elites, is they've got that depth. So give Beamer time, let him build, let him stack classes. And in the meantime, win as many as you can and get the most out of the talent that you do have on campus, right? Get the most out of that talent. But also as a fan base, just keep in mind, this is a long-term thing. Clemson, for example, we hate talking about it. That didn't happen overnight. That was something that took years. Clemson existed for years before people started giving them credit, and they got to the winning the way they are now, or at least have recently. So it's going to take time. Allow Beamer to build. Allow him to work. Hey, he's still a young head coach. He's only got a year of experience under his belt. He's going to evolve. Allow him to evolve. Allow him to grow as a head coach. Allow him to recruit. I think if Gamecock fans can do that, Mark, I do think we will be happy on the end. And I'm not saying that Beamer's going to win an SEC championship or he's going to win a national title, but I really do feel like Shane Beamer will get this program to a point of stability that it has been sorely lacking for so long. Because even the Spurrier era, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you won 3 straight years, 11 wins in a row, or 11 wins 3 straight years, but then you drop to 7. Then you have that terrible 2-10 year or 3-9 year, whatever. Like, this program needs stability. It needs stability. You know what I mean? So I think Beamer can be that guy. He's a young coach. I mean, I'd love to see Beamer there for the next couple decades, if it's possible. You know what I mean? Like, just to have that sense of stability, kind of like what his dad did at Virginia Tech. Give a program that sense of stability. If we do that and we're patient, I think we'll be happy on the other side.